Welcome to the Troubadour channel. My name is Kirk Barbera, and today we're going to be digging into the Iliad by Homer. I wanted to go chapter by chapter into this book to help you get the most out of one of the greatest, if not the greatest story ever told. Even if stories have gotten better in certain sense, it's only because they learned from and adapted and got their skills developed from Homer. Everyone starts with Homer, particularly in the West. I have put together a new translation of the Iliad for modern first-time readers. And what I mean by that is that I have stripped away a lot of the bulk of confusing things in the Iliad itself, but particularly what surrounds the Iliad. So the Iliad is probably one of the most researched topics in the history of planet Earth. It has had thousands of years of scholars spending time with this book and doing a lot of things to it, sometimes good, sometimes bad. What they've done is wonderful work in a lot of ways. My feeling is that scholars tend to be focused on scholarship, not on readership, not on understanding and enjoying the story for the story. When this was first told in the equivalent to us today of like bars, taverns, little concert halls where people would listen to a bard, a singer of tales, come out and tell a story over the course of multiple days, this was infinitely understandable to them. This was like somebody just telling you a story that you could understand today. Or you going to a movie and seeing Spider-Man? There's not all the scholarship around it. Now, the scholarship, again, has value for certain reasons that we're not going to get into today. I'm not trying to knock scholarship. I wouldn't be able to do this without them, but they often get in the way of understanding this. I've been reading this since I was a kid, and I put this together. It's a new translation from the Greek that you can pick up and actually start to read. And I'm going to read some passages, not the whole thing, but I'm going to read some passages so you can get a sense of this. I also want to go through a discussion, chapter by chapter of the work, to help you get more out of it, to squeeze the juice out of it, particularly for your own enjoyment. Or if you're writing a paper, I can give you things that you're not going to find anywhere else on the internet. Now, I will put links to other videos. So if you're really curious about the Iliad, or if you have a paper on the Iliad, there's a lot of videos and synopsis and things like that online, which I think are wonderful. And I'm very much a fan of many videos that are out there summarizing the Iliad and talking about it. So I'll link to some of my favorites, and maybe that can help you with that. But you can actually get this from my website. Again, I put this together from the original Greek to help you understand this most great of stories ever told. Now, I've done a video already on the golden apple and some of the lead up to the Iliad. One of the most important things to remember about the Iliad when you're reading it is that Homer assumes you know the entirety of the Trojan War cycle, because that's what his audience did. Just like oftentimes there will be a Batman story told today where they don't even show you the death of Bruce Wayne's parents. Spoiler, just kidding. They know that you know that. That's part of the lore. They know you know that information. In the same way, this was their religion. These were, at least some of this was canonical in the sense that everyone knew all the stories going all the way back to Zeus and how Zeus became the king of the gods. And then the golden apple, where he gave it to Paris, and Paris had to make a decision of who was the fairest goddess. Was it Hera, the wife of Zeus? Was it Aphrodite, the most beautiful goddess? Or was it Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war? He gives the apple to Aphrodite because she promises the most beautiful woman in the world. The most beautiful woman in the world, unfortunately, was Helen of Troy, or excuse me, at that time, she was Helen of Sparta. And she was married to Menelaus, the brother of King Agamemnon. Paris is given her, Helen, only by the grace and the powers of Aphrodite, but he abducts her. Or she maybe went willingly, depending on who tells the story. And if she went willingly, it was because of the goddess. But she nevertheless leaves her husband. That is a part of the story that doesn't change. This lead up to the war, Paris abducting Helen, the wife of Menelaus, who's the brother of Agamemnon, who's the leader of the biggest empire in Greece at that time, then he rallies all of the Greek soldiers. They go to Troy and they fight for 10 years. 10 years they fight. And this story, the Iliad, takes place in the last year of the war. Homer will reference things that happens earlier. He will reference some of the mythology in a way as though you know it. And I'm going to, as we go through this book, I'm going to help you understand some of those things, whether you just for your own enjoyment, whether you're writing an essay or whatever. So you have the semblance of what was the fundamental cause of the war itself. What caused the Greeks to go there? And it was Helen of Troy and the abduction of Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships. And by the way, that's a great line to a lady, right? You have a face that you're so beautiful, your face could launch 1,000 ships. During the 10 years, there is fierce fighting on both sides, the Trojans and the Greeks. Now, the Trojans have one of the wealthiest cities in the world, in the known world at this time, and they have very high walls, and they have a great warrior in the son of the king of Troy. Priam is the king of Troy, his son Hector. Hector has been doing a good job rallying allies and fighting back this horde of Greek soldiers. The soldiers, of course, just like any warriors would do at this time, they not only attack the main city of Troy, but all the towns around it. And they go up and down the coast, sacking Trojan cities and allies and taking what they want. So this is going back and forth for 10 years, this raging war. Now, right before the Iliad begins, and then we're going to get into our discussion, but this is very important. Right before this happens, Achilles, who's the greatest of the Greek warriors, and he's been basically he's called town sacking Achilles. He's he's the chief amongst all the Greeks that can sack a town. He's the leader of all of these. He's always the man in the front. He's the best warrior. He's the fastest. He's the best looking. He's also a beautiful singer. He's the best of everything, basically. He's also smart. He's smarter than most people think. He's not a dumb brute. Right before the story of the Iliad begins, Homer's Iliad, Achilles, the Myrmidons, and the Greeks have sacked another town. When you sack a town in the ancient world, you divvy up the goods of that town based on who had the most glory and honor. And that is what people say about you. So who is the best fighter? Who is the first amongst in the danger, in the thick of the danger? And it's always Achilles. Achilles gets usually the most or the second most goods, stuff. This includes gold, this includes material wealth, and it includes slaves, and in this case, slave women. So there's particular beautiful slave woman by the name of Briseis, and Achilles is allotted or given her by all the other Greeks because Achilles is the best. Now, the other best person, though, the man with the most power in all of this, the man with the most, because he has the most men, he has the most soldiers under his command, is King Agamemnon. So King Agamemnon actually usually gets the most goods. So I was kind of wrong to say that Achilles gets the most goods. He gets the second most goods. Agamemnon gets the most goods because he has the most men, which means he has the most power. So you give the best of men is who you give the awards to. So they sack the town. Agamemnon gets the most rewards. Achilles gets the second rewards, but they both get something very critical that is equal. That is these slave women. So there's Briseis for Achilles, Chryseis for Agamemnon. Now you may be thinking, why the heck does it have to be so confusing? Why does it have to be Briseis, Chryseis? Even I forget often, like, which one goes to which. Is Chryseis to Achilles or is it? Well, we have to remember that this is all being told in poetry, in verse, hexameter, in Greek. And there are no pictures. There are no moving images. There's no sculptures. There's just words. What Homer is doing is showing the equality of both of these women, that they're both equally beautiful, equally prized. So Agamemnon gets one woman, Chryseis, and Achilles gets another woman, Briseis, and they're equal. So that's important. Now we're going to start the Iliad. One thing that I've done in my version of the Iliad is, this is something I learned from E.V. Ryu, who was the guy in the 1950s who translated the Iliad and the Odyssey into prose, but he did it for the express purposes of allowing the quote unquote average man like myself to actually understand it, rather than scholars who often will confuse it or put flowery language when flowery language is not necessary, and it's more confusing. And so he wanted to create a prose version, and he did that. And he also would put these little beginning sections, although I think mine are better than his because they're more readable. But he would put some beginner sections to help you understand the action of what you're about to read chapter by chapter. I did the same thing, but I went even a step further, where throughout the story, I put, not only at the beginning of each chapter, I put a full synopsis of all the major action of that chapter, so you can have a sense of it. That way you're not confused by anything in the verse. Sometimes the verse can still be a little confusing to us. And then I put little subtitles with little reminders about the action you're about to read. And this is just to help guide you along the way. And if you get lost, you can always go back to, okay, so this is chapter 1, the wrath of Achilles. Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior, becomes furious when Agamemnon, the Greek king, insults him and takes away his prize of honor, setting off a bitter conflict between them. This chapter 1 that I have has 4 sections in it. 4 of these subsections I just read to you. The first one is the wrath of Achilles, then Achilles' oath, the return of Chryseis, and the council of gods. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You can go get well, actually, for chapter 1, you could download it for free on my website. So if you just want to read chapter 1, you can go to troubadour.studio/Iliad and get a free version of this yourself. But I'm going to read some passages and we're going to discuss this overall. And we'll do it section by section. So the first section is the wrath of Achilles. Now, I have to read this because this is incumbent on any Greek reader to read this opening lines. The opening lines of the Iliad are very important because it sets up basically the entire message and theme and the whole point of this whole story. And it goes, "Sing, goddess of Achilles' deadly wrath, that brought such sorrow to the Greeks in war and sent the souls of heroes down to Hades, their bodies left unburied on the ground for hungry dogs and birds to tear apart. This fate was sealed by Zeus from that first day when bitter words arose between two men, Achilles, bold and best among the Greeks, and Agamemnon, Atreus' prideful son." We have this story of the Trojan War starting in the middle of the action. So not even really the middle, but in the middle of the action of this conflict, really, but at the end of this war and only taking a few days of this whole 10-year war. So there's so much going on in this war. That's one of the things that makes it so exciting. So what is the conflict between Agamemnon and Achilles about? This is the wrath of Achilles. Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior, becomes furious when Agamemnon, the Greek king, insults him and takes away his prize of honor, setting off a bitter conflict between them. Chryseis, so not to confuse you, is the father of Chryseis. Chryseis is a priest of Apollo, the sun god, a very powerful god. And Chryseis goes to his temple, he prays to Apollo, and he says, "The Greeks will not give back my daughter. I beg of you, Apollo, to send them grief until I can get my daughter back." And Apollo says yes. And he goes and he starts shooting arrows of plague into the Greek camp. So the story starts with plague. Now, plague stories are in all literature, especially in ancient times. It's a very important part of literature in a sense, is this, what is the cause of corruption? That's how to think about this symbolically in a sense. You see this later in Greek literature with Oedipus. Oedipus becomes the king of Thebes, but he has to solve this problem of what is the cause of the plague in Thebes. Now, it turns out that it's him, basically, but we won't get into that. That's for another time. So here we have, again, a corruption among the group, among the society. something's wrong. Something's rotten in the state of the Greek army. That's a Hamlet reference. Something's rotten in the state of Denmark, which is the same kind of thing. It's this idea of what's going on that's causing chaos and rift and death, and we need to solve it. So who do you go to? You go to your leaders. So they go to Agamemnon. In this council among the Greek soldiers, you can picture Agamemnon sitting in a higher chair than anybody else, maybe, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And Achilles stands up and says, "Son of Atreus, Agamemnon, now I think we must turn back for home if we can flee this death. For war and plague together ruin us. But let us ask a prophet or a priest, or one who dreams the truth that Zeus reveals." And then a priest or a seer, S-E-E-R, stands up. His name is Calchas. But Calchas is scared. So he says, "Oh, great Achilles, since you ask of me to tell you why Apollo is enraged, listen and swear to help me when I tell, for I believe that one of us will hate the truth I speak." And he goes on. And then Achilles says, "Speak without fear the truth of what you know. I swear by Apollo, priest of gods above, whose prayers reveal the secrets of the gods, that while I live and breathe upon the earth, no man will dare lay violent hands on you, not even if you name the man himself, Agamemnon, king of all who gather here." So you have Achilles standing as the champion of the truth behind what's going on. And Agamemnon, it's going to turn out, is the cause. So the cause of the plague is that Agamemnon refused to give Chryseis his prize back to her father, who came begging for his daughter. And then he said, I'm going to pray to Apollo. And then Apollo comes and gives plague. Agamemnon is pissed. He says, "You never speak good news. I only hear your curses. Every time you prophesy, your heart delights in dark and evil words." Now, by the way, I'm just giving you little snippets of these speeches. So get the book, troubadour.studio/Iliad, to read all the wonderful things here. Here's the end of his speech, of Agamemnon's speech. "So I'm not left without a just reward, the only Greek to be left empty-handed. For you all see how much my honor's worth. It should not pass away to someone else." Achilles yells at him, saying, "You selfish son of a bee," and goes on about all his greediness. Now, what Agamemnon's talking about is critical to understanding what's going on in the Iliad overall, and what's the real cause of the conflict between Achilles and Agamemnon. And it's going to be so important for the rest of this story. And it's about the honor given to him. Why are they all there? Helen is not anyone else's wife. It's only Menelaus' wife. So why are tens of thousands, or thousands upon thousands of Greeks came across the sea to Troy to fight for 10 years away from their wives, their lands, their children? Why? Honor. And so it's honor, we have to understand in our context, is very different than how you might think of honor. Honor is what people give to you. That's how it's proven. You know you're honorable in a Greek society when people give you goods. If you go sack a town and you're at the back of the line, and then they are giving out goods, they give out the silverware, they give out the food that's there, the horses and the slave women, and you get zero and they kick dirt at you, you have no honor. If you get the most stuff, you have the most honor. And this is based on your glory. The more glory you have and the more glory you get by fighting in the front lines, by being the best warrior, by killing the most enemies, by having the most danger on yourself, you get more glory. People talk about you and they say, "Oh, Agamemnon's so glorious. Achilles is glorious. Ajax is the most glorious. Look at what he did." Then you get honor, then you get goods. And that's the economy of all of this. So that's really important, is understanding that that's basically the social system that they're within. And Agamemnon is going to lose the greatest prize of this latest sacked city, which is this beautiful slave woman, Chryseis. And he says, "I'm going to now take one of your prizes because I'm the great king and I can do that because I have the most men." So here Agamemnon says a few lines down, responding to Achilles, "Achilles, strong you are like gods themselves, but don't deceive your mighty heart with lies. You wish to keep your prize while I go without? You tell me to return the girl, and yet make no plans to repay me for my loss. So it's a loss. So this is the crux. This is the beginning of Achilles' wrath. And I want to point out that this is not a story about the conflict of Agamemnon and Achilles. This is a story about Achilles' wrath. Now the next section, so the first section, the wrath of Achilles. The second section, Achilles' oath. Now I'm going to read some of this. So after Agamemnon threatens to take away one of the prizes, one of the main prizes of one of his Greek leaders. He doesn't quite name who he's going to take away from, but it's a threat to all the Greek leaders, so including Achilles. Now Achilles is pissed, right? So here's what he says. You shameless man, so greedy and so sly. Why would the Greeks all follow you with trust or fight their hardest in the heat of war? I did not come to fight the Trojan spears for my own sake. They never harmed my lands. The Trojans never raided Pythia's fields, nor drove away our cattle or my steeds. Between us lie the mountains and the seas, the high, wide mountains, shadowed, dark, immense. We came because of you, great greedy king, to win back honor for your brother's name and for yourself, the king who knows no shame. But now you care not for the Greeks at all, and threaten to take what I've earned in war. I've worked so hard for that, the prize I hold, given by the army, justly won by me. And then he goes on to talk about, I'm the first one in the front lines. I'm the one who's, the cities are sacked at the tip of my spear. And you're going to take away my prize? Are you out of your mind? Or he's just the threat of taking away his prize. And Achilles is furious at this. And this goes back to this honor system. So I want you to think about this from their perspective. They have agreed to this honor system. And the honor system is based on who's the greatest. So this is a conflict about who's the greatest among the Greeks. Is it Agamemnon or is it Achilles? Achilles is contending that it's actually him because he's the greatest warrior and the cities are being sacked at the tip of his spear. If they ever do defeat Troy, which everyone knows they will, we all know what happens to Troy. It falls, sorry. And if that ever happens, it's going to be because of Achilles, not because of Agamemnon. Agamemnon believes it will be primarily because of him. That's the conflict. Who's the greatest? Who's the best, baby? It's like a rap battle. Who's the best? And they're pretty pissed about it. Agamemnon says, but of all the kings, I hate you the most, for you love quarrels, battles, and endless fights. Yes, you're strong, but that's no gift of yours. A god has given you that strength alone. Achilles at this moment says, I'm done. He shrugs and he says, I will not do this anymore. I'm done with what you're asking me to do. I'm done with your whole system, with this whole war, with everything. I quit. And he goes on strike. He surrenders. He says, no, I'm done. I'm not going to help you do this anymore. To hell with all of you. Achilles is about to fight Agamemnon. He's about to take his sword out when Athena comes and she tells Achilles, do not strike Agamemnon. Instead, simply shame him with words. And that's so important because words actually matter here. When you are shamed in front of all the other soldiers, that brings you down a peg and that makes it so that you're not as honorable and you're not as glorious. And it shows you're not as great as you said you were. And it's an attack. And you see this in a lot of these ancient cultures. And you see this in some cultures to this day, by the way, the shame culture and how calling names is actually a big deal. It's not just like, playground insults. It really means something. And it can lead to actual killing and death and war, just words. So that is Achilles' oath. There's some more that goes on. One of the wise old men called Nestor, who has gone to this war with them, tries to reconcile Achilles and Agamemnon, recognizing the real problem of Achilles leaving. Not only does Achilles leave, he's going to take all of his myrmidons with him. That's a big hit to this Greek army, which remember is an invading army. So they are not at home in Greece, they are at Troy. And so it's very important that they maintain as many people as possible, as many of the soldiers as possible. This 10-year siege is taking a lot out of them. And not only losing someone through death, but losing someone like Achilles and all of his men is a big blow to the army and to their ability to actually accomplish what they've been fighting for 10 years. Now, the next section is called the Return of Chryseis. The Return of Chryseis. Here's what it says. Odysseus sails to return Chryseis to her father, aptly known Chrysis, and offers a sacrifice to Apollo, hoping to end the terrible plague that has struck the Greek army, which they do. The last section I want to talk about is the gods. Now, one thing that happens after Achilles and Agamemnon fight verbally, Achilles leaves the tents, he goes off to the seashore, and he prays to his mother that his mother is a goddess Thetis. She's the one who married in the golden apple ceremony, if you watch my video on that. Achilles goes to her, begs her to make the Greeks recognize his own greatness. So in other words, he prays to the gods to enact his will. And this is very important as well. I think a lot of people who read the Iliad kind of skip over this kind of thing. And because we're so unused to the Greek gods. So I want to point out a couple of characteristics about the Greek gods that will help you understand the story overall. From our context, it's really better to understand the Greek gods as though they are, I guess in our parlance today, like meta-humans in a sense. Like they're human. They really are human in a lot of ways. Let me give you an example. So Thetis, who's a sea nymph, she comes from the sea. She's the daughter of the old man of the sea. And Achilles tells her the story of what's going on. And he says, look, I came here for honor and glory. I know that if I came to Troy and fought in Troy, I would die, but my name would live forever in glory and everyone would be singing my song forever. That's why I'm here. But Agamemnon has taken away my prize arbitrarily, which means that everything can be taken away arbitrarily. So you have to give them grief. Give the Greeks grief. How does she do this? She's going to go to Zeus, the king of the gods, and beg him to favor the Trojans. Let the Trojans win for a while. Now, here's what she says that I think is really interesting to learn about the Greek gods. But I will go to Zeus with this request, though he is far away for now in feast among the people of the distant sea. In 12 more days he will return to us, and I will climb to his bright shining halls and beg him for the help you long to find. Don't you notice that? Think about that in the context of a Christian world that we've lived in for thousands of years. Even if you're an atheist, you are still infected with this view of the gods, of the God. Is that there's one God. That's your view of the God, even if you're an atheist. You're not an atheist in the sense of you're not for Zeus. You're an atheist in the sense of you're not for the one God. Or if you're an agnostic, you're not sure if there's one God. Or if you're a believer, you believe there's the one God. Whether it's Islam, whether it's Judaism or Christianity, more than likely, that's your viewpoint. That's where you come from. How weird is it? Like even if you believe in prayer today, do you really think that there's a sense of, well, God can't get to my message for 12 more days, right? He's off over there. No, because you live in a world of omniscient, omnipotent God. That's the concept that has ingrained into your head. Whether you've accepted it or not, doesn't matter. You have a view of God as a concept, as omniscient, meaning he's all-knowing, and omnipotent, all-powerful. That means God is everywhere, always at once. He's like, if I pray to him here in Austin and someone in China prays to him right now or at 10 years apart, he knows all of it. He knows everything from 1 million years ago to 1 trillion years from the future. He's omniscient. He's everything. That's not these gods. These gods are bound by reality. They're gods with superpowers, but they're not gods with supernatural powers. Their powers are natural. So Zeus can't be everywhere at once, even though he's the king of the gods. You have to wait for him to come back to you, just like a normal king. So if you want to talk to a normal human king, you have to go find him and he's off over here fighting, or like Agamemnon is. If you want to talk to Agamemnon about his cities back home, you got to go to Troy and send a message to Troy to get his advice and his thoughts on it. So that's a really important thing about the gods, is that they're temporal. They're part of the natural world. They just happen to be more powerful than other humans. Now, there's one exception to this. They're deathless. Now, that is not natural. And that is a big part of what the story is about. In the council of the gods, Thetis, Achilles' mother, goes up to Zeus and begs him to give grief to the Greeks by favoring the Trojans. Now, if you've ever thought about this in war, I mean, if you have two Christian sides or two sides that are both believing in the same God, which one does the God believe in? Like, have you ever thought of that? Which one is the righteous side? If there's two sides that believe in the same gods? Well, maybe it's arbitrary, and that's how the Greeks would have seen it. And in this case, it's arbitrary, but it's based on the will of Achilles. And this is important. So the gods are going to listen to Achilles. Zeus says, although it's not automatic, he says, "This is trouble. It will make great strife. If I agree to help, my wife will rage." His wife is Hera. But then Zeus, the great god, nodded his dark brow, and from his temple shook the heavenly locks. Here's my heavenly locks. The mighty Olympus trembled at his will. So when Zeus gives a command, it ingrains itself in reality, essentially. The gods, they get together and they agree to, or they basically don't have a choice, but they have to follow the will of Zeus. So that's chapter 1. That's the first part of this book. That's the setup to chapter 1. That's what's going on. I hope you will go and actually read this book for yourself, because again, I've worked really, really hard to make this infinitely readable to you. So I think that you can pick this up. I've read some passages. Come to troubadour.studio where I'll do a lot more content on this. I do a Canonical Club where we read through all the literature from Homer to Herman Melville. And right now we're doing George Eliot's Middlemarch right there. But I also have a lot of stuff on the Iliad and a lot more coming on the Iliad. You can buy this, give it a shot, look at the first book, and I'll also guide you through it. So join me in this journey of the Iliad. Till next time.